All right, we should be live. Welcome everyone to the next Prepper Trifecta live stream. I'm hosted again on my channel, Lord Humongous. We've got Shay from Prepper Logic and JJ Johnson from Reality Survival. You can hear myself in the background, so I know it's going live for somebody. So
Sorry,
the video
that was
we
me.
did,
I was getting the chat up. My bad.
the video we did this week was going over the movie Red Dawn, which is a classic kind of. It's not really a prepping movie, but it's a survival movie, a shit hit the fan movie, and just giving our thoughts on it, what we think about the movie, what we think about the prepping lessons that can be learned, things we think the characters did well or did poorly, things we might have done in those situations, and just overall thoughts on the movie. So I know, Che, you said you hadn't really seen it in years, if at all, and didn't really have a super positive opinion about it the first time, but kind of liked it more this time, right?
Yeah. And this was more for JJ than me, because I may have, with all due respect and honesty, I might have chosen a different movie to review. I wasn't a big fan of it originally, but I did like some. There was one thing that popped out to me that I thought was really, really cool, which is urinating in the radiator. Like I had never thought of that concept before. Overall, it was an okay movie, I guess. It didn't impact me as much as I think it did for JJ.
I think part of it is, and Eric, I'm not sure if you really remember this or not, but like growing up in the 80s, and I'm not sure exactly how old you were, but like that was kind of the height of the Cold War, right? And so, there with Ronald Reagan and tear down the wall and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I was a little young. I was born the year this movie came out. So
okay, yeah. So I mean, I was born 10. I was 10 years old when this was coming out. You know what I mean? And at that time, I just happened to be really into survival stuff. Like I would go to the library and check out old Army survival manuals, and take them out in the woods and build the traps and all that kind of stuff. So this was just like, when I saw it, I was just like, yeah, I thought it was great.
I remember feeling the same way when I saw it, but it wasn't really within the context of like what you're saying, the geopolitical stuff, because I saw it. It would have been early 90s whenever I first saw it. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but
yeah.
I missed a lot because the version I saw didn't have the subtitles.
Yeah, you said that. That's pretty wild.
That makes it hard.
Which really threw me off, because there's a couple of scenes which I'm sure were critical to the storyline, where he's going on. I'm like, I had to guess, and
that one you mentioned, that one scene you mentioned, when the Colonel Bella let Jed go, it was because earlier he had talked to the Russian general or the Russian colonel, whichever one it was, about the fact that he's usually the one on the other end, that he was used to being the insurgent. He was used to being the guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so he knew that the reprisals against civilian would only like foment the support and all this other stuff. So he didn't like the way the Russians were handling it and was ready to be done with it. And that led to that moment in the end where he sees them and sympathizes and lets them
He
go.
could identify with them because he'd been in their shoes. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty good.
I thought that, I figured that when he did that hand gesture, it's like, okay, let him go. One dynamic I thought was unique was I think it was the grandfather that kind of gave away his grandchildren, the two granddaughters, maybe it was the one granddaughter and friend, which subsequently became the two main women in the movie. Mm-hmm. And that would be a difficult decision, I think, for anybody to do. It's like, for the sake of survival, you give up family members to a group of people that will increase their chances of surviving.
And specifically saying that he didn't want to know where they were going either, in case if they came to his house, knew he should know where these girls are, and didn't even want to be able to give up that information if he was, tortured or pressured or something.
And in the I think, Che, you may have mentioned something about why did they go to Calumet, Colorado, or something along those lines. And
why the invasion did?
What's that?
Why the invaders went there, you mean?
Yeah. Like, why are they in this sleepy town? Why are they in this place or whatever? And obviously, it's a fictional town in Colorado, but Arapahoe National Forest is just west of Denver. So my guess is that, fictionally, that was a place that was basically located just west of Denver, probably on I-70, and they were basically stopping or controlling traffic in and out of that area at that front or something along those lines. Like that would be my kind of the best guess on why they were there. I don't know. Because I-70 is like a main thoroughfare. It's probably the busiest freeway in the United States through that area. So, because there's very few.
Okay. Do you think it's plausible today? Will there be some sort of, we'll say, North Korea? to invade the U.S. Like
So on the new version of the movie, it wasn't going to be North Korea; it was going to be China.
Yeah, it was going to be China, but they had all sorts of issues because the studios like to release movies over there, and the Chinese were really pissed off about it, so they made it North Korea, which makes no sense because the North Koreans don't have enough people or the force projection or any of that stuff to make it possible. Not that the Chinese could even do a land invasion of the U.S. Like you mentioned in your video, JJ, like the stuff that would have to go wrong from satellite imagery not being seen, mobilizing all the stuff, signal intelligence, like
every int, like
impossible. It's just impossible.
Yeah, I mean, SIGINT, HUMINT, ELINT, I mean, all the ints, you know, all the intelligences, they all failed miserably all at once. I mean,
yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And with the size of the U.S. and everything, it would just be very difficult for that sort. They would have to be regional. They wouldn't be able to spread out over the whole country like they're supposed to in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, you know, taking the Northwest or taking, you know, like California or like, please do, or, you know, or something like that, like small sections, like maybe Florida, like Cuba invaded Florida, you know, or something along those lines would be a little bit more realistic, I think. But, you know, a whole full scale invasion there's no, I mean, a lot of people think the Russian military is this massive thing. It's half the size of our military.
Right.
You know, Chinese military is basically equivalent to our military, you know. So I mean,
but only in terms of size. I mean, when they don't have the ability to just send.
They don't have the transports. They don't have the Navy. They don't have any, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you know, there's really, I mean, Canadians are probably the only ones that are even close to being able to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, they showed the tanks and everything else. Like, it would take weeks to get all that stuff over here, you know, by boat or whatever. And it's just not realistic. It makes for a cool movie, but luckily it's not very realistic.
Speaking of Canadians, interesting statistic, and I don't know if this is how recent this is. We'll say in the last 3 or 4 years, out of the number of spies they found to invade Canada, the majority are Americans that have been caught. For whatever malicious reason, I have no idea. But that's I thought that was an interesting statistic.
We know you. We're watching you guys. I'm just saying. You guys, you're sneaky up there. You've been infiltrating your socialism for the last 20 years, man. Come on.
Good job. We're definitely
sending over your Justin Biebers and your everyone else to infiltrate us.
I think we have the best comedians. The Austin Powers, Mike Myers, Jim Carrey. But I don't want to get.
You can have Jim Carrey back, dude. You can have him back.
What's that?
You can have Jim Carrey back.
Oh, right. All right. What was your favorite scene? What do you guys?
My favorite scene in these movies is always the initial figuring out, like raiding the store for supplies, and when they're first attacking the high school, out through when they get out to the woods is probably my favorite section of the movie.
Yeah, who was that guy at the beginning? That was one of the kids' fathers or something like that?
Yeah, it was the dad of one of the. He was with. There was one of the kids who was with them at the time, but I don't remember which one.
It wasn't Matt. I think it was Robert's dad.
Well, Matt and Jed were the same brothers. So
yeah, Matt and Jed were the brothers.
I
think it was Robert's dad.
Yeah, they were Robert's dad. And
amazing how they were like that guy. That father was like a prepper, basically.
yeah, he had some kind of crazy camp store.
Yeah, just not all the gear. And they knew right away. And that scene was probably 10 seconds long. Well, we need food. Oh, we need bags. We need this. And it was, you know, the guy was a prepper, basically. I thought that was funny. What about you, JJ? What was your favorite scene?
You know, I tend to like the ambush scenes. I thought the ambush scenes were pretty well done for the most part. You know, usually they had the high ground. Usually they controlled the situation and kind of did it when they were ready. And then even when they were on the high ground, they had the camo. They had pre-dug out the holes, had the girl run past, you know, and they pop up. I mean, I think they really did a fairly decent job as far as ambushes go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, they didn't do anything really, really stupid like having each other line up and shooting across each other, you know, or anything like that. I mean, I thought that was pretty good.
One scene where they first rescued the people who were about to be killed for the insurrection. They were firing with the troops that they're firing are in between them and the innocents, so there was a possibility in that chance of them.
But they were elevated, though.
It was elevated, and there was a little bit of an angle, but they were behind them. So,
yeah, that's
true. But they were on the edge of like the road, so there wouldn't have been much other option in that case.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Here's an interesting question.
Sorry.
Someone brought up on my video, they were complaining because I said that it was a big mistake for them to have not had any water with them. The whole reason they had to piss in the radio, like they're getting all this stuff, they're grabbing footballs,
Right.
soda,
Pepsi
and everything else. And a bunch of people mentioned that they didn't have bottled water in 1984. I'm like, that's fine. I didn't necessarily mean pre-bottled water, but this camping supply, obviously for hunters or campers, you still had to carry water with you. They would have had canteens, they would have had buckets. It was a massive oversight to not have any sort of water with you, in my mind.
No, I agree with that. I thought it was interesting. Keisha mentioned here in the chat, she said something about the 4473s, the gun records. I thought that was an interesting point in the movie that I never really picked up on before.
Yeah.
You know, just younger and not knowing anything about the gun registration process or, you know, all that kind of thing. I thought that was fairly interesting because it's probably fairly realistic if a country ever tried, you know, they would probably want to try to get their hands on records like that.
Right. It shows how even collecting or using that sort of information or biometric data or anything, even if it's not being misused by the people currently using it, there's always that potential with that information being out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny how I watched the new one back to back to the first one.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's funny how so many people hate on the newer one, but I actually think the newer one, if it was China instead of North Korea, let me just say that, because North Korea and their, you know, plywood navy, I don't think they're getting it. But I thought it was actually pretty well done. I tended to think it was a little bit more realistic. You know, Jed was a Marine and all those kinds of things. I mean,
I'll have to watch it again because I just remember I was such a fan of the first one that I was just kind of bothered that they were even trying to make a remake and, you know, kind of went in with lower expectations. I don't remember hating it. I just remember being like, there's no need for this. You know, the first one's better. But I'll have to go back and watch it and again and see because I just saw it once in theaters.
Yeah. I mean, and it was, you know, instead of meeting up with an F-15 pilot, they met up with some retired Special Forces guys, you know, and they were a little bit more kinetic, a little bit more action, you know, as far as a movie goes. Now, as far as the whole realistic scenario, I don't know, you know, it was in a bigger town. It was in Spokane instead of Calumet, you know,
Right. And that was
Colorado. So
what's his name? This is the Negan. That was Negan, actually, that played the.
He was the Special Forces guy, yeah.
Yeah, which actually I had a question about that. Maybe you guys would know is the equivalent of that character in the original 1984 Red Dawn. Was that guy banging the one girl? Because they seem to be pretty.
The potential was there. It wasn't ever said that they actually consummated the.
Yeah, there was some hints that there may have been some late night snuggling going on or something.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some Twitterpation going on, but I don't know if there's actual fornication. Let's put it that way.
Well, he had died, and then suddenly, you know, she was like, "This is my first love,"
right?
You know, and she was going on with that, right? So I figured, okay,
yeah,
well, good for him, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You know.
His family got burned up in Denver, so.
So Max Saber says, "What about the end where they made a mistake when they got the food dropped on the road? It was obviously a trap. I know they were hungry, but they took a big risk." Yeah, no, they did, and it was pretty obviously a trap.
Yeah, I was never clear on what sort of trap that was supposed to be, though. Like, was there a tracking device in the food? Why wouldn't they have just poisoned the food or something? Like,
I think it was the track. I think that's how the kids swallowed. Or maybe that was maybe.
No, they made Daryl swallow the device when he went back into town, and he knew he had swallowed it. In this case, they got the boxes, and they apparently just sat by the side of the road, very near to where they had got the boxes, and then the helicopters. So I didn't know if they just expected them to still be there. If
it may have been a thing where they were just looking to catch them with surveillance, so they could follow them back to their camp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just see when they come out, and then just follow them back or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Which
brings up an interesting question I had. For you gentlemen, with respect to, I guess the character's name's Daryl, that intentionally betrayed the group, the clan,
sure.
Which he ingested some sort of tracking device and went back to the Wolverines or the group of people, and they figured out that he was being tracked. What would you guys do in that situation?
I think I would have to be with Robert in that situation. I mean, he knowingly brought them back, knowing that they would certainly kill all of them. You know, what did he think was going to happen? So this wasn't something that, like, yes, and his father, it's not even that they, like, coerced him, so to speak. Like, his family turned him in, and then they made him, I guess. But he he could have at least, if they coerced him to the point of torturing and made him swallow the thing, okay. But if he comes back and says, hey guys, instantly tells them, they made me do this, we got to get out of here kind of thing, that would be one thing. But I would think you'd have to take him out probably.
So you got, basically the way I see it is you got three choices. You can kill him, you can keep him as prisoner, or you can let him go. If you let him go, you have to immediately move camp way the F away. Like, you got to be willing to haul and move your location significantly, which is tough to do on limited, calories and all those kinds of things. That in a sanitary world where you don't have relationships, I think it's pretty easy to say that you would take them out and you would kill them. But in all honesty, this is a situation where these guys were high school friends.
Right.
They were growing up together, going to school together. And I don't think, looking back to my high school friends, that I could probably kill any of my high school friends.
I don't know exactly what type of friendship. I mean, it's kind of supposed to be a random handful of kids who just happened to be there to jump in the back of the truck. Obviously, they knew each other, and it was a small school.
School. So yeah, I mean, they might not be like super tight or whatever, but you've definitely got some connection to them. So I think that I would probably.
It's quite an offense, though, in my mind. Total betrayal of everyone.
But if his parents are making him do it and all that kind of stuff, like, I think
that's what I'm saying. If he's forced to do it, okay, they break him, they make him go. But then if he shows up and says, look, guys, they got to me, they're coming here, we got to get out of here, that's one thing. But he sort of allowed this whole thing to happen, knowing that these people were probably going to kill everyone there, or at least torture or whatever.
That's right. There's a difference there for him to show up, and because he could have been right away to say, look, I've been compromised, here's the situation. But instead, they wrote it in such a way for him to be quiet about it. They discovered it on their own. Just one quick side note I want to add while I'm thinking about it is it's kind of morbid. But what about actually cutting out the device out of him, kill him, cut out the device and capture some sort of animal like a deer with some sort of snaring trap, so the deer's alive, and forcing the tracking device into an animal as a diversion. You know what I mean?
Well, that brings
chasing. That's still a death sentence for him.
Yeah, Prune Picker actually commented Daryl had to keister it. He didn't swallow it. So if you want to go fishing for it, yeah, maybe you could get it out.
No, I mean, you have a point, Jay. I mean, that would be probably a really good diversionary tactic as far as like getting them off your path and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Provided that you could get the deer to go where you wanted to go. I mean,
it's not going to be there. And it's always,
it's going to go randomly, and you just hope it throws them off, so you never know where this thing's going to be.
I mean, I'm just saying, I've been bow hunting quite a bit, and even a deer after it's been shot might only run a couple hundred yards before it lays down and hangs out a little bit. So
right. But if troopers start coming through the woods at it, it's probably going to run away.
Yeah. Sure, that's true. Yeah, good point.
It's definitely not going to hang around your camp or your group.
Right. Yeah.
And what I wasn't sure about in that scene was they seemed awfully prepared for this little. So maybe they had gotten the info out of Daryl before that somehow, because they were already queued up, lying in wait for these guys that were. And I don't think they just had that kind of security, 100 or 24/7.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure how they managed to do that.
All right, what's next?
Let me see. We got anything in the chats? It said he never should have come back to camp. I sort of agree. They said should have left him tied to a tree 24 hours in dirty water to drink. Well, that's the whole thing. If you're not killing him, you might as well just let him go because he has all the information. Obviously, he's probably already given them all the information about the number of people, who they are, all that sort of stuff. But you could change where you were. That's really the only thing you would have left. Friends don't lead an army to your position. That I agree with. So Caleb says Che looks like he's in the Temple of Doom.
Is that Caleb?
Caleb Block?
Oh, I think it's a different Caleb. I know Caleb up here. I wonder if it's the same one. Yeah, Temple of Doom. I think he's white. Harrison Ford. Not a brand. Oh, maybe I'm one of the bad guys in Temple of Doom. That's
yeah, he's a Colin, my guy.
Right, the heart guy. Yeah. I did. One thing that I took away from the remake that I thought was interesting. They didn't do this in the original. Obviously, it was the whole fire concept, where the North Korea guys like, "Oh, we smoke them out, Wolverine. You smoke." We had some sort of phrase, right? You light them on fire, and he lit large portions of the forest on fire. And I thought, well, That's
they
kind of
leveled it with mortars, didn't they?
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I thought that's a great way to smoke somebody out, and that's probably a technique I would use if I was on the end of trying to infiltrate a small group of teenagers in the mountains, something like that, because you can't really fight fire in a post SHTF situation. What do you guys think about that?
Well,
Yeah, I
and
think
anytime
especially
it's
nowadays,
raining
there'd be a
mortars,
lot of ways that you
sucks.
could pretty easily mess with the people hanging out in the woods. But in the movie, set up that they were a little bit overextended, trying to control this area, and that makes it a little more realistic. That the Cubans and the Russians that were there were having a little trouble trying to, they were kind of caught in the middle between the lines, is what it seemed like. They were at the outer edge of where the lines had kind of formed for this war. Because yeah, you could just burn the woods down. You could just nowadays you'd have like infrared and thermal, so someone hiding in the woods would be pretty easy to spot in their little camp, things like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and nowadays with today's technology, this would have never been a movie. And like if they had aerial assets and infrared and FLIR and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it would have been a 25-minute flight, and then okay, we got them.
Right.
And
Nowadays you would have to stay in the town and just do guerrilla type warfare, stuff while living amongst everyone else like they do in Afghanistan and everything else.
And so too, if we had an EMP, then they may not have their electronics wouldn't be in use. Potentially. I know one technique I would use if most of the people are probably going to be having fires up here to keep warm, cook food, things like that, and just you get your drone between, I don't know, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night when it's all dark, and you'll be able to visually see these little plots where the fires are and locate the people that way.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us up a question too. Have you guys ever tested Mylar against infrared?
Not personally.
It's fairly effective. It's more effective if you combine the Mylar with vegetation.
Otherwise it'll be a pattern, like a square.
What's that?
There'll be you'll literally see the square or rectangle pattern of the Mylar.
Yeah, exactly. Because everything has a temperature. Everything has its own temperature. So if you put a lot of like leafy vegetation or pine boughs and stuff like that over the top of it, you get a lot better breakup on the outline. The one problem is if you stay in that position long enough, your body heat will start to heat the mylar up significantly, and it'll start to glow. Just like anything else that you add heat to. So it's a good short-term remedy, but it's not a long-term fix.
But you couldn't make a Mylar suit and just be invisible to it.
Well, the Mylar suit still has its own temperature, whatever it is.
No, that's what I mean. I'm saying you couldn't do that because it would just heat up the suit after a few minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But the combination of the two, the combination of a Mylar blanket or an aluminized blanket, they got different kinds of tarps and stuff, like the ones that are orange on one side and silver on another. Those work pretty good. You put that in and then put a lot of leafy vegetation, green vegetation, pine boughs and all that kind of stuff, and work that into it. And you can do pretty good at hiding your silhouette from thermal.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. What did you guys think of the girls? They seem to be overwhelmingly aggressive in this movie, to the point where they were apart. There was no discrimination between men and women in terms of the attacks or the that they were doing. It was just the group going out. Do you guys?
We don't have sexism in America, so I don't know what you're referring to.
They didn't have that one scene where he tries to get her to do the dishes and she flips out on him. So I think it's potentially that there could be a lot of drama. It depends on the individuals and what their capabilities are and things like that. There's some people that you wouldn't want to let them go near the ambush, male or female, And
I thought they were both hot. I'm not sure what else really matters about any of their involvement in the movie aside from that, but.
I didn't even hear what you said. What?
I said I thought they were both pretty hot. I don't know what else matters.
Yeah. Obviously, the main reason we got him in there.
10-year-old boy, when you're watching them the first time. Yeah. I thought, speaking of characters, I mentioned this a minute ago, how I'm not a Patrick Swayze fan. I'm not even a Charlie Sheen fan, really. Need to see them young, but more so the character of Swayze. Like they got the right. I won't say the right guy, but he sure, maybe we'll say the right guy. The very alpha qualities in him. I know that seems so cliche, but he was his character was perfect. This was a guy that was in control in the beginning too. I really like that, where one of the kids was freaking out. He was saying, well, let's go back into the town. And he's kind of like, he grabs him and says, you know what, F you. This is where we're at. This is what we're going to do. You want to go. Like, he really took control of the situation. And I really respected that about him as a leader in this movie. His role as a leader was perfect, I thought.
And I thought the interpersonal conflict, just to tag on to what you're saying, the interpersonal conflict there was spot on with how groups are when they're thrown together. I mean, that's the storming phase of interpersonal conflict right there, and group dynamics. And that's something that you can expect in any situation with any group, regardless of maturity level or any of those kinds of things, is they're going to go through those struggles.
Absolutely. I think that's when you say that too, when you put it that way, that's what made it real for me, is to show the struggle. It wasn't just him going out and, everything was perfect. It was the fact that there were these plateaus, highs and lows, and confrontations and struggles that made it more genuine and real. And how he reacted to that is what made him the alpha male, or the charismatic character that was needed for this role.
Yeah. And I think he did the right thing too. I mean, you have to do that, and you have to do it soon too, to say, look, this is the way it's going to be. You have your chance to leave. We're not forcing you to be here, kind of thing. But if you're going to stay, these are the ground rules. And it's funny to see how, I think it's realistic how, even though they just ran away from seeing their classmates and teachers being shot to death, they were so afraid and just out of their element, they were willing to immediately go back and turn themselves in, which would be insane. But I think that is what a lot of people would do, because they just, they wouldn't know any other way to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they say it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
The third term that we hear about lately.
Freezing is the worst one of all of them.
Yeah.
That's like they always told us in the Army. They said the best thing you can do is the right thing. The second best thing you can do is the wrong thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. That's always the worst thing. It's just not acting.
We were, up in my network here in Canada, real quick story, talked to a few guys that did overseas shooting, real life combat through my preparedness networking, and freezing was one thing that some of the guys would do in a real gunfight. And it was, the stories I've heard, they were scary, and there was a psychological disconnection with some of these soldiers, where there's people being shot right beside them, and they would like literally sit down on the ground and just completely disconnect or freeze from the reality around them, because they couldn't psychologically adapt to the situation. And I think that we saw a bit of that in the beginning part of the movie with as Eric was suggesting. The one guy was like, well, maybe that surrender is a viable option.
Yeah, I'd read somewhere that, I don't remember the exact percentage, but they did some study. I think this was early on, like World War I or II, where there was a significant minority percentage of soldiers that never even fired their guns in combat. They would just, like you said, they would just be there, get behind cover, and just wouldn't be able to act in any way, even as simple as sticking their gun up and shooting it in the direction of the enemy.
You want to guess how many people in combat crap themselves?
I have no idea.
25% crap themselves. They admit to it.
Is that related to like not being able to go to the bathroom and consciously doing it, or like out of fear shitting yourself?
Literally scares the shit out of them.
Wow.
And 50% of people interviewed piss themselves. And, those are just the ones that admit it in, post-combat interviews and all that kind of stuff. So, the numbers are a lot higher than that. But a good book on this is one I just finished rereading for the second time, was On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And he talks all about the effects of combat and the after effects and all that kind of stuff. It's a very, very good book. It's not a long read. It's definitely something that's worth looking at. He's got On Killing and On Combat, and both of them are excellent books.
After a few days of MREs, and those things stopped me up. It wouldn't, even just a little bit of running might do that to me. Nothing to do
You're running with a 3-pound load in your pants?
Yeah. I'd just be like, oh my God, I gotta run. God damn it.
We got them up here. We got MREs. There's some stories about the U.S. government intentionally putting a constipating agent inside your MREs. So
I always heard that the gum was supposed to be a laxative to counteract the constipating effect. Oh, it's all bogus, but I remember one time it'd been so many days I thought I couldn't even sit up straight. Like, I was gonna bust out my side and cut through my uniform.
So what it is it's your body's natural survival response. When you get put into a new environment, a new situation. You're out in the woods, you haven't been there before. Your body immediately stops processing everything that it has in it, and it holds it for literally days.
And sometimes it'll suck moisture out of it too if it needs to.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a survival mechanism. And when I used to teach the survival school, we would have people go through the whole 6 days in the woods without crapping.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and it's like, what?
Right.
I mean, so.
And then all you have to go in is like a porta-john that's been out in the 100-degree heat all day. You think you're gonna die in there?
I heard this story of a guy. I probably mentioned this to you guys before. For some reason, I think I did. But there's a formation, and you can't break out of formation. It's like the cardinal rule as a soldier not to break out of formation. And this guy was, he didn't want to break out of the formation, so he literally shit his pants. And shit was running down his leg and out of his uniform, but he didn't break formation as he was going through it.
It's wild.
I think we're getting a little off
That's
topic.
dedication right there. I'd have been like,
Caleb Block says these guys always go back to the scat chat.
it's a real part of life, especially in the woods, man.
Yeah, it's stuff you don't think about. Yeah. So Bumblebee Junction says 6 teenage guys on the way to the woods with hot chicks, and they grabbed fruit pies at the gas station instead of condoms. Now, at the gas station, they didn't have any women with them at the time. So it would have been really bizarre if one of them grabbed a handful of condoms. I think I would have kicked him out of the truck.
Good point. But see,
like, no, you're going to
that's
stay
where Mark's mind is. I guarantee you, that's where his mind is. He's just kind of a sick, twisted freak like that. So, it's funny.
Trey says, just logged in. What actually is this topic?
I don't think there is one anymore. I'm not sure.
Yeah, right.
Weird.
It's about how long it takes you to crap on MREs.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's get back to the movie here.
So, can we do a new subject aside from the movie, or do we have anything else we want to talk about on that?
No, I mean, I'm good on the movie. I think most of our videos say pretty much what we saw on that. Went over the big topics. Yeah, we can get on to whatever you want.
I was just gonna. It may be a little bunny trail. We could go back to the movie. I was just gonna get your guys' thoughts on communications for preppers. I'm getting ready to do a little bit of a series on comms and all that kind of stuff, and I was just kind of curious of what your guys' thoughts were, what the best frequency bands, radios, those kinds of things. Just kind of throw out your thoughts on communications and stuff.
Sure. I have very limited experience with the radios and stuff like that. It's something that I have been looking into, so I'm going to defer to you guys on that, because other than just handheld walkie-talkies and a few things that I've used in the military, I don't have any serious communication gear like ham radios, short waves, or anything like that.
Well, for me personally, it's an ongoing education. It's just a field of knowledge that just constantly expands. We're talking communications. You got to get your ham license first and foremost. UV5R seems to be like the de facto ham radio. They're cheap. They're reasonable. They're got a wide variety of options on them. But if we want to get specific or advanced, there's something you can do called what's the term? It's called PSK 31. And what PSK 31 allows you to do is convert a digital signal to an audio signal through a special device in your ham radio and a laptop. And I don't want to get too technical and go to the jargon right now. Something I'm entertaining setting up and looking at, which basically through your ham radio and through a laptop, you could have a chat interface.
Sure.
Which very, very limited amount of megabytes or storage.
It's kind of like VoIP over radio, over digital radio.
Yes, exactly. Independent of the internet, which I've always thought was sort of a fascinating way to be able to keep in contact, because yes, we can have some sort of power devices to keep your laptop and your ham radio charged. So if you had two stations independent, you could essentially have a chat window to communicate back and forth. The specific hardware needed to convert the analog to digital signals by a company called, I think it's Sigmatel or Tiger. I want to say Tigertronics or Sigmatel, but there's a device there's an interface that converts the signal. But you can only use that with your advanced ham, which I'm working towards. So that's down the road for me. But ham aside, communications.
So you have your technician license already?
Sure. So there's a lot of basic things that you can do to.
No, I'm asking, you have your technician's license?
Not officially, no. Do I have my label VE3 or whatever? No.
Unofficially.
I'm actually taking a course on it right now, literally as we speak.
Okay. I've been
I mean,
thinking about it for a long time, and I've studied up on it, on the ham license and the general technician's license and all that. And, you know, I kind of feel like I've come to the conclusion that the ham license is a thing that is really probably more of an advanced prepper kind of thing, like not a huge priority, because you can have ham radios and listen to ham frequencies without transmitting. And if it's an emergency, which, you know, the collapse of a government would be considered an emergency, right? And there's not going to be any FCC to stop you from using, say, for example, the Baofeng UV5Rs or whatever the case may be. So I've begun questioning if it's really necessary or not. I've been looking a little bit more into the GMRS. That there some of the recent changes, at least down here in the States, that the FCC has made to the GMRS channels are pretty darn good. Like, you know, you can get up to 50 watts transmission, and you can just have a family license. It's one license for a family, no test. It's like, I don't know, $60 to $80, something like that. It lasts like 10 years now. It went from 5 to 10 years. And, you know, that includes all the members of your family. And you can transmit on 50 watts. And there's repeater stations everywhere. I mean, you pull up a map of the GMRS repeater stations, and they're all over the place. So, you know, you can really gather a lot of information and talk a long ways with some of the new radios that they have in the GMRS frequencies.
That's always the way I've looked at it. Is it seems more useful as a way to gather information, because otherwise if you have a network, I guess you all have it all set up ahead of time.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense to be able to talk to them. But I've always thought about you'd have to have ways to communicate without using electronics. Like, there's always a potential for this stuff to not work, or you're out of range, or, you know, maybe you meet someone new and start working with them. You don't have extra radios, so things like you know, dead drops or dislocations, codes, whatever you want to come up with.
Yeah.
And there's other methods. I even have some cards, speaking of communication, that are like visual representations of certain activities, so you can communicate with people in other languages without knowing the language, you know, for bartering or for, you know, medical attention, whatever. You know, you can use these cards and point to and communicate with people interpersonally. Yeah. So
I think we call those pointy talkies.
Yeah.
Way above and beyond, you know, just hams. I've been playing with hams, but I have to make it official. I'm actually, it's a 10-week course. I'm in the 4th week of it right now. So I'm actually going through the process right now to make it official, just to expand and start playing with it officially, as opposed to unofficially. That's all I'm going to say right there. But it's above and beyond hams or other sorts of electronics, sort of going down the lineage of thought, as Eric was suggesting, which is there's a lot more to communications than people, preparedness individuals, appreciate. I think it could be something as simple as, you know, hanging out with a different group of preppers post SHTF and having phrases that we use. So if me and Eric are meeting up with another group, and I could say to Eric, I could go like this to Eric and say, well, sun's going down pretty quick, eh? That could inadvertently mean something to Eric, which would mean, you know, we could pick your, you know, insert your secret code word phrase here or whatever meaning. So there's a wide variety or spectrum of communication above and beyond electronics that we can go down the rabbit hole with, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, so, like challenging passwords and things for your actual location. If someone's running up in the dark, and something you can say to them when they're alone to make sure they know, or like you mentioned, code words.
The blue goose flies through the trees. The blue goose.
Yeah, running passwords, challenging passwords. You gotta have code words and symbols. Like if someone comes up to the gate and you make a hand signal, like whoa, and one of them means light this guy up. You know, if you see something weird from the hidden people, whatever, you know, all sorts of stuff. But you have to set it up ahead of time, you know, or people wouldn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So not your average guy says something here that I think is fairly important, especially Che, if you're getting your license. Just remember to have a PO box as your address when you get your GMRS or your ham license. Otherwise, your location is public knowledge.
Yeah, excellent.
Call, sir. Your call sign.
Yeah, that's great. And we have extensive privacy laws here in Canada, and there's a checkbox when you apply for your call sign, and you can opt out, and it doesn't give you that. You don't have that option. It confuses other hams around the world because they like to have the basically they like to have a confirmation of a transmission everything's in GMT. With your time zone, you send these cards out, and they mail these postcards back and forth. But you can't do that if you can't look up somebody online that doesn't have an address. It's almost like we're hiding something.
Right.
So, smart. Excellent point. Yes, excellent point.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, even if you use a PO box, you're still not hiding from the government, right? I mean, because all you got to do as law enforcement officers go to the post office and say, "Hey, I need this guy's address."
I'd be more concerned about other preppers, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Says, am I drinking whiskey? No, I'm not drinking whiskey. I'm drinking a margarita. Well, I was drinking margarita.
Drank a margarita. I can't drink alcohol during these things because I have to go to the bathroom too much then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You guys don't know what I'm doing. I'm urinating.
I don't even have pants on.
No, it's a whole other, communications is really a whole other avenue. But
some personal stuff is a whole other ball of wax. Like you can get into the weeds big time on that. I mean, there's tons of stuff you can do: hand and arm signals, technical signals, all that kind of stuff. I was just more curious about radios and that kind of thing, and I know that the going wisdom within the prepper community is you got to have your ham. I don't know. I'm beginning to question that wisdom a little bit. I think
I agree with your stance on it, that it's for most people, unless you have a network of locations and people, it's not essential. It would be very useful, particularly for getting information more so than for actually communicating directly with people that you already know. But if you do have an extended network, I can see it being very useful. But like for someone like myself right now, what would I be using it for? It would almost exclusively be just for listening, and like you're just talking to people, you might not even know where they are, you'd have to set that up ahead of time.
And if you're concerned about your government attacking you, or any other kind of sophisticated force, any foreign other country or whatever the case may be, the biggest drawback to ham radios is that their direction finding, is you can DF a ham radio that transmits on a lower frequency from a lot further away than you can DF, a small handheld GMRS radio that transmits on a higher frequency. It doesn't have as long a distance and all those kinds of things. I mean, so there's some fairly serious potential offset concerns and all that kind of thing if you're trying to stay, a little bit more under the radar, so to speak.
I think it's, for me, and it's funny you bring it up tonight because it's sort of my bread and butter for educational material right now. I'm going through the technical manual page by page. I haven't got a whiteboard where I'm making notes. I would strongly recommend individuals to go out and get their license. I mean, people like us guys, we can bang it out in a weekend. It's a multiple choice quiz. It's nothing to get your ham license. I think there's a difference between getting your ham license and having a real understanding of, what an actual frequency is, what band
radio wave propagation and all those kinds of things, line of sight communication, all that.
Everything.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely good education. I'm not saying that.
A little bit where he was suggesting, what do I need ham for? To me, it's adding to the arsenal of communication, being able to listen in potentially. We don't know. We don't know if maybe somewhere east or north of you or whatever the case is, if we have the ability to hear what's going on around us potentially through alternative communication such as ham is beneficial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be beneficial. I was just saying I don't think it would be crucial for most people. And but like you said, it's probably not that difficult to do it. So
it's not. It's very easy.
So we got a question in the chat. Trey W says, what do you suggest when you have neighbors you don't trust? Any thoughts?
If you don't trust them now, I'm assuming is the question. Like you're already having issues with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want them to know about what, my preparations, that's for sure, if I didn't trust them. But I would plan like they do know and might, do something about it.
Trey or Che, your thoughts?
There's a few people out there. There's definitely some people out there I don't trust. What would I do? What would I do about somebody my neighbor? First off, I'm not here. That's the big misconception is I'm not I've got other places I can go that are sort of nothing to do with this place, off the grid, so to speak. I don't know. If they come knocking on my door, I think I need more context to the question. Like, what do I do about a neighbor?
Well, I think he's saying basically he's in a living situation where he's got some neighbors who are pretty undesirable, and maybe not the best folks or whatever the case may be, and he's trying to figure out how do I address these guys and how do I deal with them, and I tend to think that the first answer is do what you can to try to make a relationship with them if it's possible. So some sort of connection, some sort of bond, some sort of, common interests, whatever the case may be. Like, for example, I had some neighbors when I lived in Southern Maryland of some guys that I was a little sketchy about. I wasn't really sure on where they stood on things and all that kind of stuff. And so I went over and started talking to them, took over a couple of beers. They were working on their car one night. We went out, we were talking and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of had a little bit of a bonding session and all that kind of stuff, talked about cars I used to have and helped him work on his car and all that kind of stuff. We ended up being friends. Had I not made any kind of overt move to try to get to know them, I would have just always viewed them as a threat. I tend to think that a lot of people will look at people and examine them based off of their looks and say, he's not my kind of guy. And, this guy was one in particular that I did the same thing, but I made that effort to go and talk to him and found out, no, he's actually a pretty cool dude. He's pretty laid back. He's really not something that I would consider a threat. So, I think that's the first move for people when they have folks they don't, really know is try to engage with them, because it could all just be a persona. The tough guy, the tattoos and all that kind of stuff. It may not actually be who they are.
Yeah, some people just keep it to themselves and whatnot. And doesn't mean go over there and tell them about all your preps, but I mean, just as simple as having a rapport with them, saying, hey, when you see them and things like that, is just having any sort of relationship at all is going to make things a lot different in any sort of stressful situation. But I would say, assuming that this is a situation where you already know, you have had interactions with them, they've all been negative or something like that, then you would plan for that the same way you would plan for the knowledge that there's just going to be people in general that are going to be hard to deal with in after a shit the pants scenario. Have methods of self-defense, have methods of securing your gear, any sort of surveillance maybe if you have that option, and then just be aware of where they are, what they're about, and prepare accordingly. But it would all depend on the specifics of what's actually happened between you and what you really have to be afraid of. But if you don't have anything specific that you've actually had problems with, definitely go with what JJ was saying and, at least create some sort of relationship with them. Thanks, Bumblebee, for the super chat.
So Bumblebee's got a cool channel if you guys are into homesteading. I've given him shout outs on my channel several times, but if you want to learn anything about gardening or homesteading or whatever, definitely check out his channel. He's got a lot of good information over there.
Cool. I just make an interjection there. I disagree with both you guys, and I take the approach of just ignore them. That's it. To me, I'm just generally a private person, and I have this thing where it's like once you start relationships, then bad things start happening. I think then you see this person. You go ahead.
No, I mean I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your point, and then I'll say something if you finish.
Well, once you start interacting, and then you got to say hi to them every day, and then you got to help them out if they're lifting a table into the house and stuff like that. And I would prefer to just
help the old ladies carry their groceries, and before you know it, you're married to half of them.
Yeah. And then you got to go over and have tea and all this other sort of bullshit that I don't wish.
Yeah, I was looking at this from the perspective of someone who is in immediate proximity with these people, suburban neighborhood, an apartment building, something like that, where contact is unavoidable anyway.
I guess no, it can be, because you know what? I'd rather look like an asshole and completely ignore people and just go to my apartment or do whatever I'm doing instead of being, oh, how was your day? Did you have a good day? I had a bad day. Blah 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 blah. And forget all that interpersonal, dialogue between people and just ignore it.
But I mean, so within the questions, assume you're in that situation, you're ignoring everyone, but for whatever reason, there is someone there that you found out you can't trust. do you do anything differently would be the question, or you just continue to ignore them and recognize that they might be a problem after shit hit the fan.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I think it's the same take as driving. When I drive down the road, I'm assuming people are shitty drivers, that they're going to cut me off. So now if I have a driver that I see ahead of me that changes a lane that doesn't signal, suddenly their credibility level goes down, and I'm more aware of that particular driver as opposed to everybody else. Everybody starts off with a -5. He went to 10, right? So with this particular neighbor, they would go to a -10. That doesn't mean I would engage, and that's commendable, JJ, for you to go and have a beer and blah, 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 blah. And sometimes I do that in particular situations to understand what's going on, but I really dumb it down. I dumb down how I look. I dumb down how I talk. All the intelligence goes. It's the equivalent of like a grade 3 grammar into intellect. Hey man, what's going up? What's up with the weather? So what's going on down the road? You know,
that's naturally the way I tend to do it. Is I just tend to ignore people, not even out of it's just laziness. Like I just don't have that. I'm very personable, but I don't have that desire to like go meet everybody. And if you're in an apartment building and there's 500 people in this building, yeah, there's no point, I don't think, in trying to get a personal rapport relationship with all of them. But if you're on some semi-rural property and there's one place that's quarter mile away and you see these people all the time, you know, that makes more sense to try and build a relationship with them than everyone in your block in a suburban neighborhood.
Sure, fair, very fair, fair enough. Subjective to pending to develop relationships in certain areas and not. But I'd play the avoidance game. Put your headphones in. You got to be in an elevator. Every time you get home, you're in an elevator, put headphones in. Somebody's talking to you, I'd be like, I'm just, ignore.
So okay, RJ says prickliest Canadian ever.
Right, yeah.
That's funny. No, okay, so I'm actually surprised by your response on that, Jay, because you're normally a third-tier thinker, and that to me is first-tier thinking, and that surprises me that you took that track, because to me,
kind of like sweep it under the rug kind of thing.
Yeah, because here's the thing, like, so if you act that way to people that you live around, okay, we're assuming you're in close proximity somewhere to them, that just makes you more of a target. It makes you easier to kill. It makes you
an outsider. So if they might decide to gang up on you or something.
Exactly. They can be like, dude, I saw that guy carrying a bunch of shit into his house one night. Let's go fucking whack that dude, you know?
You'll never see that, though. That's the misconception you have.
Well, you get my point, though. You get my point. Is it creates a persona where you're not part of the group. You're not part of the.
That's the thing. I've always, as Eric was suggesting, an outsider. I've always been an outsider. I don't care. I don't care what people think. And for the most part, I wouldn't be here talking with you guys right now unless I respected you guys. I respect you, JJ, and I respect Eric. For the most part, most of the people that I see on a daily basis are walking around on autopilot with these pre-programmed behaviors, bumping into shits and buying products they don't need. I don't have. It's for me.
Meat suits.
It's a time thing. It comes down to time. So to respect my time, why would I invest it into individuals that are a waste of time?
So here's why. I guess I'm more devious. Maybe I thought you were more devious than you are. But I fully agree with you as well as far as the respect and all that kind of stuff. But you know, if you go over and you have a beer with somebody, or you go in to have tea, or you help them carry a couch in, or whatever the case may be, that's a lot of information you get right there, right? You get to go look through their house. You get to see what kind of stuff they got in there, how they live. You get to see if there's any obvious weapons anywhere. You get to see how much food they have. You know, like there's all kinds of advantages to being gregarious and personal and those kinds of things. And then if it comes down to a force-on-force situation, they're going to hesitate if they have a relationship with you. Whereas if they don't, there's no hesitation and you're automatically at a disadvantage.
Sure.
So I guess I just, and we can agree to disagree, right? It's no, you know, everybody has their own methods. It's just that, you know, when you, I guess maybe part of this is just running counterintelligence for 20 years. It's like, you know, that's kind of my mindset or whatever is forming those relationships and trying to be able to.
And also Shay's mentioned before that most of the time in a serious situation, he's going to be bugging out fairly quickly anyway. So that does change things.
That's true. That is different. Yeah, that's true.
The answer is, JJ, I don't feel like there's a threat. You're right in that if I develop a rapport with a specific individual group of people, they're less likely to cause me harm or whatever. Maybe I can get them to walk my dog if I go on vacation. All these wonderful things could happen if I develop a rapport. I don't care to develop a rapport because that means my time. And you're right. Would it be less of a threat if there was a rapport? I don't consider them a threat. And not that I'm, this omniscient superior prepper. I don't see the people that I have around me. I don't see a huge challenge, I think, is the best way, especially with the people that I have supporting me if something were to go south. We'll put it that
Interesting. No, I guess it's just a different sort of perspective or whatever. I mean, like I'm out here in a more rural area, and all of my neighbors, and most of them are a quarter mile away or so, but they're the ones that see my property the most often. They're the ones that know what I'm doing. They know, what's going on and all that kind of stuff. And I want those people to be tight. You know what I mean? Like I want to be able to trust those people as much as possible.
In that specific context, I'm probably aligned with your rationality. I think I would want to know what the other people around me were doing, to determine if they were a threat or not. If I've got the senior couple over at that house over there and I've met them, I've had tea or whatever, then I can eliminate that as being a possible threat and focus on, as opposed to expending resources, time, whatever, worrying about what's going on around you. 360, you can eliminate things and, different if you're off.
You're exactly right. And I have this one particular neighbor over to the east of me that I've lived here 2.5 years and I've never seen them.
Yeah.
I've never seen them. I don't even know if they're real. Like it's the weirdest thing, man. I mean, I'm like constantly looking out for them and they don't ever come outside and it's creeping me out, man. I want to know, like,
how do you know someone actually lives there? How do you know someone really lives there then?
Well, I mean, the house is kept up and, all that kind of lawn doesn't grow and, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, and I know almost all my other neighbors, but there's this one set that I've never been able, and I'm thinking about just going and knocking on their door and just like, hey, I don't know.
And the shotgun movie trap goes off and blasting the church.
So with that said, with the nature of what we've been discussing for the last few minutes, do you feel inherently more concerned with security because you don't know this neighbor?
Yeah. And I don't think that I don't think there's any issues, and I don't imagine that there is, but it's just not knowing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just I think they're older, and they're probably more hippie type, liberals, kind of escape on their own kind of folks. That's my general impression and talking with other neighbors and stuff. But I just like to know firsthand. I've always been that way where I want to know the people that are around me. I
kind of I understand that, but like in practice, I'm definitely more along the lines with what Che was saying. Like I have talked to very briefly, just by happenstance, the neighbors who are immediately next to me, but that is it. And I'm in a normal suburban neighborhood, so there's houses everywhere.
Yeah, man, I go out of way to like clear my neighbors' driveways, like out of snow. Like today, I went up to the neighbors, I cleared the driveway with snow. We give them eggs from the chickens. Like I'm always trying to build those relationships as much as I can, wherever I can.
Grab my Amazon packages and scurry inside, looking over my shoulder.
I'm more like Eric, and that there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, JJ. That's commendable. I'm just inherently a private person, and I think that most people are idiots. To be blunt,
I do tend to agree with that 100%.
I have no problem being around large groups of people, parties, whatever, and talking to people, but I'm just naturally private. Like I don't just go out of my way to talk to people. So I agree with you, JJ. I see the utility potential there, but I also sort of see what Che's saying, and I don't know if it. And I think in certain situations, like I think here would be mostly futile. I could develop good relationships with 5, 10, 50 houses immediately surrounded me. I'm still in a city of 2 million people, like it might come up, but as an issue, but who knows?
Here's the thing too, as well, with respect to not, I've got people around me where I don't make eye contact. I just do my thing. And that doesn't mean that you're not social. It doesn't mean anything. There's this lady that walks her dog all the time, right? Well, I can tell it would be easy for me to get in there and, hey, how you doing? What kind of dog do you have? Oh, here's a treat. And develop something that would turn into, basically a clusterfuck of bullshit and a waste of my time for the long and short. I see what you're saying, though. Get into her house, see what's going on, see what kind of resources she has. I guess I have maybe, I'm blinded to the confidence that I have. I think I don't need to see what other people have in terms of resources I can get or resources that can be used against me. But if something were to occur, I could instantly dumb it down, see on the road, and go down and put my hair down and be like, hey, what's going on? I heard something about this and this and this, and develop that immediate rapport with her, playing dumb, playing like the average person. It was like, hey, we got a situation X. Now I'm going to open up and figure out what's going on, going out to the court or the street or whatever where the other neighbors are. Or here's the guy that didn't really talk to people, but now he's out and about, right? This is what he's all about. But I'd probably do that then, just to pick their brains, their intelligence levels.
So Not Your Average Guy says the OnX Hunt app is a really cool app. It's one where you can see all the properties that are around you and your property lines in your state. And I will second his notion on that. If you guys don't have the OnX hunting app, it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you are planning on bugging out. And I don't know how much they have up in Canada, but it'll show you all the public land, all the BLM land. It'll show the landowners' names. I mean, it's a very, very good resource. It also shows like hunting migration patterns and different things like that. So for those people who really know that they're going to have to bug out right away, the OnX hunting app is pretty sweet.
How do you spell that, JJ? Is it like ONX? That's it?
Yep, ON and then X. It's an orange. I can show you the icon. I have it right here on my phone. It's the ONX. Okay. It's orange with the X in the middle of it.
Cool.
And it's a really good app. I mean, it really is. I think it's like $100 a year or somewhere around there to get all the data, like, to get it all like uploaded and everything. But you can when you do that, you can download the apps onto your phone so that you don't have to have the cell signal to get it all. And you can just have the downloaded versions for the area that you're in and everything. And it's a really cool resource.
A big factor in and of itself, the fact that you can take it offline. And that's one of the inherent issues that a lot of preppers have. They've got, I got this app on my phone, but there's a difference between having apps on your phone and having access to them when there's no internet or there's no infrastructure.
Yeah, you can download regular maps too most of the time you can do and just have it. Like obviously an EMP or something, the phone doesn't work at all, but even absent the cell tower, you could still bring up the physical map and use it like a regular map.
Well, like Google Maps will let you download specific areas for 30
minutes. I mean, yeah, you can download the zone and then actually be able to zoom in and look at all the stuff there. So as long as you have power for your phone, you can use it like that. Obviously if there's an EMP or something in the phone.
I've always got to the old school, back in the 80s and the 90s, the traditional road map.
Oh yeah.
The actual book in a Ziploc bag, huge Ziploc bag that I always have with me.
Road Atlas, got to have one of these sitting around.
Beautiful.
There you go.
Congratulations. Very cool.
A lot of people don't know that your GPS on your phone will still work even if you don't have cell signal.
Yeah, it'll still show the roads and everything like that.
No, the GPS will still work. It'll show your location and where you're going and everything because it's just a receiver. It doesn't have to transmit. It just receives the signals from the satellites to work. So.
Well, that's assuming that all that signal's still being processed.
Yeah. So how did your live stream go, Che? You had your tests.
I did a test. No, I had an issue with my ankle today. I was going to go out to Camp X this morning and do a bit of filming out there, but I had an issue with my ankle. It's cramped up pretty bad. I quit smoking.
Nice.
The vape thing. I quit the vape a couple weeks ago, so I'm not vaping. I'm on zero. I have a glass of wine on the weekends. That's it. And I think it's.
Why did you quit? What was your reason?
Well, I was out with my mentor, Doug Gedgood. I don't know if you guys know him or not. He started a survival school with Les Stroud or Survivor Man.
Nice.
A time ago, and he lived in the woods a year alone. So he's got a lot of knowledge. He's very, very proficient at what he does. And he was talking to me a couple of weeks ago about how the vapes, like the battery exploded and actually lodged into somebody's head in the U.S. And
I heard about that. Yeah, it killed somebody.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, maybe I got to get off the vape. So long story short, I'm having a bit of a constipation issue which I think is attributed to
We're back to the shit.
Here we go. We always keep coming back to it. We got to change the name of this chat
acid
to the Scat Chat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I couldn't walk this morning. I could not walk. So I wanted to go down. I got some video ideas. I was going to make a video or two and then do a live stream at Camp X, and I couldn't do it today because my foot, because of this, all comes back to the smoking. Because I quit smoking, I think that
do you get like
threw
gout
off my ankle.
Is it like gout?
Regular. Sorry?
Is it like gout? Do you have like a gout flare up or something?
That's fine. That's exactly what I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an over acidic buildup, and probably due to me not going so regularly, and in addition to a little bit of wine. So
Yeah, because it's uric acid in the joint, isn't it, for gout?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll put it this way.
Generally speaking, it can. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard that diet can have a lot to do with it. And all that.
And that's the thing too. There's two things there.
Gotta lay off the pizza bagels.
Yeah. Well, I've been walking around with a cane today, and my diet has been out the roof because my mindset has been like, well, quit smoking, quit the vaping, quit everything. Just eat whatever you want for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Just let it go. It's going to be cookies in the morning. It doesn't matter. Let it all go. You're not smoking, Che. You're not smoking. So I'm riding that wave, and I'm eating a lot of garbage. I am. I really am. But I'm not smoking, which is fantastic, So maybe it's caught up with me. So unfortunately, I couldn't do the live stream because I got this gout and this constipation. There you go.
It happens, man.
All righty. Okay.
No, it does not.
No, it does not. Did not happen. It also happened.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have coming up on your channels?
Ooh, I've got a bunch of stuff planned, man. My list of to-do videos is so long. I need to do more sun oven videos. I got some of the legacy food test. I have an EcoZoom stove like you just did, you keep beating me to all these videos. I'm thinking about something, and then JJ will make the video, and I'm like, God damn it! Now I look like I'm right.
Now it looks like I'm following him.
And I've had this EcoZoom stove forever. I just recently did a collaboration today with Morgan from Rogue Preparedness about trying to start a fire with a ferro rod with one hand.
Okay.
And that was fun.
How did you end up doing? I didn't get to see the video. How did you end up doing it?
I ended up, I kept accidentally cheating. Like, next time I'm going to put like an oven mitt on my hand or something. But my general strategy was I put a couple sticks down and I used this as a striker because I didn't want to mess with a knife in case I cut myself if something went weird. So I just laid the striker on a piece of wood like this, stepped on it, and then used my large ferro rod and dragged it. I put the tinder under and then dragged it up like that while I was pinching it on the ground, and that worked. So
yeah, I had a video on that a while back. I guess it's still up. It's just I had like a little US knife, and I stepped on the US knife, and then dragged the ferro rod back across it with the tinder bundle right there, and was able to
that's basically what I did too, and it worked. She had a really like jumbo one, like a 1-inch ferro rod. So she just knelt on the ground, put it against her leg, and it kind of stayed in place while she struck against it like that. So no,
is she the girl that? I only saw the thumbnail. I didn't catch the video there, Eric. But is she the one that did something on EMPs with the first 5 signs or the first 10 signs of an EMP? I think I recognized her.
Maybe she's been doing a video every day for like 300 days, so I have not watched all of her videos. She does a lot of content, so it's possible.
I think everybody here should check out her channel. Yeah. She had a concept. I caught one of her videos. I don't watch other prepper videos, but I caught her 3 or 4 years ago. I was doing a little bit of research on the EMPs, and one of her things was, well, if an EMP occurred, what are the steps you should do to confirm it? And one of them was open your window and listen outside of the traffic. She lived by a highway. It was actually to listen to the actual vehicles going back and forth, which I thought was pretty interesting.
There's definitely a lot of debate on what percentage of vehicles will be affected and all that kind of stuff. I mean, some estimates say it'll only be 20 to 30% of vehicles.
It's like a sufficient metric, but not a necessary one. Like if all the cars have stopped, it's a pretty good indicator. Just because they haven't stopped.
If they all stopped, then yeah.
It's not, right. But if they haven't stopped, doesn't mean it's not.
Well, here's, the one test I'm familiar with, which I believe is on futurescience.com through a gentleman named Jerry Emanuelson, which is I forget what he's an electrical engineer or something like that. It was referring to a test back, I think it's in the 90s, when they had 50 vehicles, something like that, from the Department of Defense, and they threw on we'll say a 50K voltage or electrical charge. Don't quote me on that. It was like one of the very few tests.
That was the EMP commission test.
That's right. Yeah, U.S. EMP commission in conjunction with Department of Defense vehicles, and they found like 3 stalled. Most of them you could just turn them back on. And I made
only one vehicle actually wouldn't just turn back on. I think one truck had to get towed away, but most of them stalled. But that was it.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I referred to this in my last conflicted video, was let's pretend 1 in 50 stalled or 1 in 100 stalled. That would still create havoc on a highway because people can't drive now.
Well, it might be worse because instead of all the cars just being stuck where they are, there'll be worse bottleneck traffic jams as the remaining 50% of videos try to get the hell out, or videos of the vehicles try to get the hell out of there, driving around, smashing into the stalled vehicles. It would be better if everything just stopped to where it was and you could actually get out of there.
Right. No, you're exactly right. If it were only a certain percentage, even 20, 30% or something stalled, and all the rest of them crashed into it, you're just causing more and more death and injury and casualties and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
one is going to stall, and Betty Crocker is going to go off to the shoulder, and everything's going to keep going. If 1 in 1,000 stalls, if 1 in 1,000 vehicles stall tomorrow at 1 p.m., it'll be like vehicle chaos. Traffic.
Yeah, if it's 1 in 10, then Jesus.
No, 1 in 1,000, we'll say. 1 in 1,000.
I know, but I'm saying if it's significantly more than that, it would be even worse.
Oh yeah, it'd be hell on earth, literally.
Right.
Yeah,
and also another thing to consider though is
planes falling from the sky and
right. These vehicles in the 90s, obviously they've been electronic for a while still, but nowadays vehicles have so many more minor circuits and sensors that, well, they're not directly related to the vehicle running engine-wise. Like they might go haywire a lot more easily.
Yeah, so
completely rendered inoperable, they might not work right, and they might, and just wig out on you.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So because cars have so much more electronics in them today, they're also building in a lot more shielding from the components, from one component to another, so that you don't get feedback through your radios and different things like that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. That's where a lot of folks don't really know for sure exactly how they're going to go. The one thing that they do seem to agree on is that electronics lockup will be, fairly widespread, and that's where you at least need to get out and unconnect your battery and then reconnect the battery and then try to restart it at the minimum level. That's probably going to be an issue with most.
Yeah, I mean, now we're getting to the point even where a lot of, very new cars don't even have a physical key. The key fob itself is an electronic device that just has to be proxy. So even if the car is fine, if that thing wigs out on you, you can't drive.
That's true. And luckily, the smaller the item, the less electromagnetic energy that it'll.
Not as much surface area of wires and stuff, but we don't know. Like no one really knows for sure what things would be unaffected and what would.
Exactly. There's people out there that jump on this bandwagon and say, well, blah, 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 blah. My car's got a Faraday cage wrapped it in tinfoil, whatever. The reality is we don't know, because maybe things were tested 50,000 volts per square meter on XYZ electronic, and it was fine. But who's to say that 60,000 or 85,000 isn't going to make that difference of frying up the wires inside? We don't know. Faraday cage, sure, it's going to work to a certain degree for a certain amount of voltage. And I have a lot of pride in saying we don't know. I don't know personally. I've done substantial research into EMPs, and and that's what bothers me about some of the other preppers out there is they say with absolute conviction that this is what is going to happen with scenario XYZ. And I'm thinking more in terms of a geomagnetic storm or an electromagnetic pulse, but it's speculation. It's speculation at best. Really.
Yeah, if you had to choose between the two, I would certainly much rather have a coronal mass ejection than I would an HEMP for a specific area.
Why is that?
Well, because the coronal mass ejection is not going to affect small electronics at all. It's really only going to affect the long transmission lines. It's the same as the E3 phase of the EMP. It's that long, slow buildup of electromagnetic energy along those lines that ends up taking the transformers out. But the things like your flashlights and your NVGs and your, and whatever other electronic devices are all still going to function, right? So you're not going to have any issues with those.
Not to mention what it represents to have, okay, a nuke just went off above our heads. It's not going to be the end of it, most likely.
Well, yeah, I mean that's you're in full scale war at that point,
Right.
Well, I think one side has already won.
I mean, not if they're hitting the U.S. because all of our stuff.
I think here's the greatest fact.
We're still going to put a few nukes that could launch somewhere.
Yeah.
I'd rather the EMP because it's going to happen. Just get it done. And a geomagnetic storm, a coronal mass ejection, it's just like, okay, it's like it's lingering. It's, for a week or whatever. It's EMP would be just one big. Fair enough. May not affect smaller electronics. The ultimate attack, I think, we're talking about war, would be for a foreign entity to do the nuclear thing and wait for the people to wake up and get out their electronics and get out their whatever, wait about a month or two.
Sure, and him again.
Do it again, exactly.
So here's an interesting concept, and I wish I could remember where I heard it. I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but I'm not saying that I have any inside information on this or anything like that, but that if the U.S. policy is, this was their speculation, right? That if they're hit with an EMP, they launch and program their nukes to go worldwide and to put everybody back into the Stone Age. That way, we're all on the same playing field again.
That's right.
And I could absolutely see, the war college professors and stuff like that are coming up with this kind of response policy, coming up with a policy exactly like that. Like it doesn't matter who hit us, because all of a sudden the whole world is going to be back into the Stone Age.
Yeah, it's the same mutually assured destruction type of preventative measure as just everyone having nukes in general, saying no one hit us because even if we don't know who it is, you're going to go down still.
Yep. I mean, what a great deterrence, right? Like,
yeah.
Like if you know that North Korea is planning on doing this, you better tell us, because we will nuke every single one of you effers.
Well, they're playing with the technology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
My last, I remember Boeing had something to do with the U.S. government, where they had the capacity to actually zero in specific rooms within buildings to zap some sort of EMP wave or pulse within the room to shatter the electronics. Zeroed in, I guess, is the best way. Focused in. The lens was focused in on specific areas, which I thought was fascinating. The fact that they're playing with the technology to, maybe for anti-terrorist purposes or XYZ
Sure.
purposes. And it's
there's a lot of cool stuff out there. DARPA, if I could have one job that I think would be like the funnest job ever, it would be to work for DARPA. I mean, because that's all they do is they just come up with like experimental shit. You know what I mean? Like experimental weapons and all that kind of stuff. I think that'd be so much fun.
So fun until you open a rift into another dimension.
Well, that's always a possibility, I guess.
Yeah, someone mentioned that a lot of military stuff is shielded, and that may be true, but I mean, an EMP done over the country would just decimate everything else. So, okay, the tank is still working in the National Guard lot there. Who cares?
Yeah.
Everyone's still gonna die within a year, probably.
Well, yeah, the nuclear infrastructure is all going to be fine. That's not going to be an issue. And all the military, the hardcore military vehicles like Humvees and tanks and helicopters and, planes and those kind of things, those are all going to fly. But the problem is that, nowadays we've civilianized so much in the military that, you're probably looking at 60% or so of the military vehicles are just civilian vehicles. They're no longer like, militarized vehicles. So
yeah, you can drive around like SUVs and everything else like that. They're not always using up-armored Humvees and stuff.
Exactly. I mean, they're driving like units that used to drive Humvees and stuff like that exclusively are now driving like Ford pickups and all that kind of stuff, And I don't know why we're going to that model, but it's.
And also, I mean, just on a normal base, people might rely on things as simple as a cell phone to get their guys to show up somewhere, And if they're off base housing or somewhere, like how do they even let them know to come in? You know, if everything goes haywire.
Yeah, no,
They can't use email anymore.
Interesting tidbit of information. Speaking of Humvees, is the very first Humvee that went from the military to the public to purchase was bought by Schwarzenegger in the 90s. The very first one. That was kind of cool.
That's true. Yeah, he bought the first one of the publicly available ones.
Yeah. One other bit of information that people should be aware about, at least where Jerry Emanuelson is concerned. He's one of the, like, if there's the four horsemen or the four godfathers or whatever you want to say with respect to EMP in terms of my personal research, he's one of them. It's futurescience.com. There's amazing information on there, which I've carefully scrubbed over. One of his concerns is that, okay, who cares what happens with the vehicles? XYZ might happen to the vehicles, but all the pumps with respect to, like, the gas pumps are definitely going to go in his view. So it's not like you'll be able to go up to any gas station and get fuel. You won't be able to.
Right. No, that's true. And his site was one of the sites that I used for my 17 misconceptions of EMPs videos. He has a lot of good information out there. I mean, I will say that it's not. There are other credible sources that do dispute some of the stuff that he says, but as a general rule, his stuff, it does seem to be pretty mainstream with some of the other, like some of the folks that wrote the EMP Commission and Arthur Bradley and different folks like that. So there's definitely a lot of good information there, and I would highly recommend that folks check out his site.
You're rated too. I think it was, the gentleman's name's Woolsey, former CIA director. Mm-hmm. Woolsey, his last name.
General Woolsey. I did a protective service operation for him once.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll talk about that another time. Oh, it went to Eric. He went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It just disappeared. He's not there. He's gone. Interesting with what he had to say. There's about an hour documentary with him speaking about the effects of an EMP and the concerns he had. And if that doesn't bring it to light, and I've said this in previous videos, and in the context of other things, what concerns me is who cares what you say? Who cares what I say? The end is near. You should prepare. You should do these things. It doesn't matter. It's for the average person that just clicks in now and doesn't know your background or my background. It's the equivalent to some guy on some major street in New York holding up a sign saying the world is nigh. But when it comes from a source to which I deem credible, like the former CIA director, Woolsey, saying, look, this is an area that we are underprepared for, we should prepare for. To see him express it in such a manner that seemed very passionate and genuine, to say, look, we need to get our shit together, basically, should open up the eyes of the average person, I would think, as opposed to some guy in a cowboy hat sitting here on a video. I mean, this is something that is ubiquitously discussed with any intelligence, and anybody concerned about preparedness, even in Canada as well, because we've got an emergency preparedness website. They talk about, well, it's a tornado, well, it's flooding or this or that or whatever. But for some reason, they completely ignore EMP.
Yeah,
this is one thing that will literally decimate us, and it's inevitable.
Well, I think it goes back to that video that Eric did a long time ago, and it was the first video that I ever saw of Eric's, and I think it was the reason I started watching his channel, was when he was talking about high impact, low probability, or high probability and low impact. Okay. And EMP really falls into the high impact, low probability.
It's pretty much maximum impact, but luckily it should be a lower probability. Unless something's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, obviously you can't really.
I don't know. Didn't we have something there a couple of years ago where it like there was something from the sun and it was positioned in such a way that we missed it? But
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's inevitable, but the odds of it happening at any particular 10 or 20-year period are still fairly low.
So, yeah, in 2012, Quebec experienced a direct hit from a CME.
I know all about that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and knocked out the power and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was a big deal. There might be a mathematical argument to say that a CME is a little bit more likely than an EMP from a nuclear weapon. right? I think you could make that argument. I mean, but you still have to understand that, that the Earth is traveling through space at 17,000 miles an hour or so, or something along those lines, in the orbit around the sun, and it would have to coincide perfectly with when that coronal mass ejection happened to come out. You know what I mean? So you have if you, and I'm not a mathematical brain, so don't take me this way, but
don't worry, I don't think anybody is.
I'm just saying there's a lot of things that got to line up for that to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to.
Sure. I mean, well, it's the same thing with a financial collapse or a viral pandemic or any number of other things. And, it's taking the dice and throwing it down, and, we can't predict random, and we don't know. I agree. You're right. All these sorts of things have to align perfectly for it to occur. I think it's inevitable, though, in the respect that
on a long enough timeline, right? On a long enough timeline, it will happen. I agree.
We know it's going to happen. It's just, will it happen within our lifetimes?
Will it happen within a time period where we still use electricity?
Right. Just like the Yellowstone caldera. Like, we know that thing's going to blow up eventually. And yes, it's technically overdue, but it's on a geological time frame. So,
right.
I guess that's what bothers me is we don't know, and we are in a position where our future, our psychic capabilities from NASA are 3 to 5 days in the future where we can see it's going to happen. It's not like we don't have a lot of advance notice.
Yeah, there's no way to know. I mean, it could, starting tomorrow, there could be a massive solar flare every day for the next 10 years. But I mean, all we can look at is the fact that over the past X number of years, they haven't been happening that regularly, serious enough to do anything. Yeah, so we can extrapolate that it's fairly low likelihood, at least, but obviously we don't know exactly what the chances are.
Okay, all right. I think we're beating a dead horse here. We can speculate.
So I want to throw in a thought that I was watching Bear Independent the other day, and if you guys haven't seen his channel, he came in our chat one time. I don't think he's in here tonight, but he's got a good channel, and he talks a lot of stuff. And he was bringing up the point about conspiracy stuff, and we're kind of on this tangent, is why I'm bringing it up. And he said something that I really agreed with, and I just wanted to get your guys' take on it. And that was, if you're a conspiracy guy, if you don't have any reason or business worrying about that stuff if you don't have your basic preps and stuff in order. And I thought that was just such a good, valid, and salient point to the prepper community. Like, don't worry about all the stuff that could happen or the possibilities and all the nonsense and all the stuff that's out there and the chemtrails and the EMPs and all that kind of stuff. If you don't have basic food, water, security, and all those kinds of things covered, then you're thinking about the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're 100% focused incorrectly. You need to be thinking about because no matter what the scenario is, the basics of survival don't change, right? And so I think that's an important thing to take away here is and I get, because I do these conspiracy debunking theory videos on stuff, and I get these conspiracy theorists that go off all the time, and I'm like, you probably have almost nothing done in your preps.
Yeah, and I agree. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was going to say it's what I've mentioned before. Like Jack Spirko calls it the commonality of disaster. It doesn't really matter what's causing the disaster. There's going to be a little bit of unique situations you have to deal with, whether it's an EMP or whether it's nuclear or whatever. But for the vast majority, you need the same things no matter what's going to happen. And I've even gone farther than that in my videos, saying that a lot of these people, you shouldn't even be worrying about normal prepping stuff until these are people who can't even go handle a normal emergency in their life. They don't have a $500 emergency fund, and they're worried about normal prepping stuff. And certainly you shouldn't even be worried about normal prepping stuff or the super crazy conspiracy stuff if you don't have several months to a year's worth of normal food and electricity and medicine and that sort of stuff, because that's what you're going to need anyway if these are true.
Absolutely. Yeah, no matter what the scenario is, pick your scenario. If you don't have your preps covered, I mean, just put a gun to your head, it doesn't make any difference,
Smith and Wesson retirement plan.
Exactly. What do you think, Jay?
It absolutely sure. There's a ubiquitous nature with respect to preps. We all need food. We all need water. We all need shelter. And it's funny because if you were to put it like the position of a pie, you can cut off one chunk that says we need to prepare because we look at history and we look at we analyze it logically and rationally, and historically people that have not prepared have not done so well. And then there's another piece of the pie where you look at people in the military that have gone overseas and they've seen the horrific things happening in certain countries. So that's another piece of the pie. We got this huge pie, this huge circle, and part of that pie includes some crazy fucking freak shows that are hearing voices in their head, or they're part of a cult that are talking to space cadets, and we all need to prepare because of that reason XYZ. That doesn't change the fact that we all need food and water. So we're all essentially preparing for the same reason. But one differential I would suggest people would open their mind to is sometimes they get wrapped up in the specific disaster type. So somebody will prepare specifically for a viral pandemic. So they'll focus exclusively on a viral pandemic. There's nothing wrong with having a Faraday cage, with putting some essential electronic supplies in that. I guess what I'm trying to say is you're limiting yourself in some respects. You're covering the basics, but you don't want to prepare for everything because we don't know. But before I forget, I think it was Caleb had mentioned Suspicious Observer is a YouTube channel which does space weather in the comments here, which is I'll second that. The man is with respect to understanding solar weather on a it was daily basis when I was watching him.
I will not third that. His channel is good, but I would.
A couple years. What happened?
Well, I would say that he, like the last X-Class solar flare that came out, he was really building that up a lot more than what it really ended up being. And so I think maybe he just errs on the side of caution, or maybe he's a little bit on the fear-mongering side.
Okay.
But I do tend to agree that it is good to take a look at those people who are watching specific events, right? Like, so you get signed up for if you live in the U.S., the USGS, the earthquake, notifications, where you get notifications of earthquakes. And if you can find somebody like his channel that watches solar flares and different things like that, I think NASA even has a site that monitors them as well and stuff. But I remember the last one, and it was shortly before I got signed up for his thing, and he was really thinking, he was like, this is going to be a big one, blah, 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 blah. And it turned out to be nothing. You know what I mean?
I was just going to say that I think the best way to kind of relax on the conspiracy theory stuff, or all this, like, not even conspiracy, but the solar flare, is just those type of channels, just watch them all for like a year. Watch every single video. And sooner or later, you're going to see a trend emerge, and you're like, no, none of this stuff is actually happening. Doesn't mean it can't. Doesn't mean it won't. But like every week there'll be a new video. Ooh, this has happened. This is a big thing to worry about. This is going to end life in the U.S. Mel Tappan's been making the prepping books in the 70s. The same. You could take out the financial figures and everything, and that would seem just as relevant as today. And
the financial collapse videos or channels are just the same way. You can look at them, and like every week for the last 14 years they've been
and saying we're at that's harming, because there's a lot of people who probably don't prep at all because of that. Mm-hmm. And where I do think I think it's important. My whole channel's about that. That's why I do these videos. And I think some of these things are inevitable, but to live your life like this stuff is always right around the corner, always imminent, is just not healthy, and it's not productive.
I never got that from Suspicious Observer specifically, because
I'm not speaking to his channel because I don't think I've ever watched it. I'm just saying it.
Fair enough. And I completely agree. Absolutely. There's a prepper in California. We'll give him a nickname. We'll call him Paranoid Mind, for lack of a better term. Where it seems to be this.
I think he means the prepared mind.
No. I didn't say anything. I said paranoid.
Didn't say that. That's allegedly. He didn't say anything.
Allegedly, right? It's the same bullshit over and over. It's this fear-mongering theme that we have. With respect to Suspicious Observer, like the few videos I saw, the man knows what he's talking about with respect to interactions with the planet Earth. There's a lot of intelligence with what he's saying. I had no idea that he was coming across as fear-mongering, as we were suggesting, Jay. So I'll look at it.
It's just one person's opinion. You know what I'm saying? I might have caught him on a couple of bad videos or something along those lines. I mean, it was just
knows more about the son than I ever will. The interaction,
Yeah.
the way that, right. That exactly. That's my
totally agree. I do think he's an expert in the field. I'm not saying that, that he doesn't know what he's talking about and all that. I just think these
Not the
guys.
sort of thing, and to feed on with respect to what Eric was saying as well, is the notion that there are a lot of preppers out there, this disproportionate number of preppers that are constantly monitoring solar weather or the news and whatever. It's almost like they want to be in the know to know when to bug out. And I know people like this in person, in real life, that they're constantly listening to news because they're afraid,
Yeah.
And it's sad and it's shitty. And Eric's right, if you're living in this world with a cloud of fear over your head and you're preparing because you think something is going to happen, then you're not enjoying your life.
Absolutely. Could not agree more, dude. Could not.
I 100% agree, and I've made comment or videos and stuff on that before. And one of the things I always make videos about regularly is just the everyday preparedness stuff that people aren't really. I just posted something on Twitter the other day because I keep getting these comments on the food videos about how many calories people are going to need when all this work you're going to be doing after shit the fan. And that's not necessarily incorrect, but I'm like, all these people, half the people that are making these comments couldn't even walk up a flight of stairs right now. And they think they need 4,500 calories because of all this work they're going to be doing. Like, you guys couldn't even fucking climb out of a pit if someone hands you a rope.
Yeah.
Like, unfuck your physical situation, unfuck your financial situation, your normal, making sure you can handle normal stuff before worrying about apocalyptic stuff.
It's a delusion. There's definitely a delusion aspect. What saddens me too, and I've seen this with some of the Dark Pepper Mindset videos I have, is there are a disproportionate number of like really creepy guys out there that think they're gonna get like bagged by all these girls and have resources, and they're waiting for it. And I've spoken with journalists that have had discussions and interviews with various preppers and whatnot. And there are people out there that are definitely like they're embracing SHTF. They want it to happen because they know their social status or their social level of being some fat slob sitting in their mother's basement, being a 1, they're going to go to a 10, and they're.
Bingo! You hit the head right on the nail, dude. That is exactly. There is that class of people that want SHTF to happen so that they can change their social standing. I absolutely 100% agree with that. I want to say that Caleb Block says there's way too many obese preppers. I'm going to disagree.
There's too many obese people, period. I mean, I don't know if it's any worse amongst preppers, but just Americans in westernized countries in general.
Well, here's what I'm going to say is that obese people, you need to prep more than anybody else probably. Right? Because you can't get out there and do the stuff like go hunting for food and go trapping and go do all those other things. Like if you're an overweight person, you need to prep. Like you need to, because you're going to be screwed if you don't. And you at least you can slowly work your way down into fitness and that kind of thing, because it's going to be a tough life. Yeah,
and like I've said on some of my videos, after the apocalypse, if you want to use that term, there's not going to be any like that's pretty good for a blank, for an old guy, for a fat guy, for a girl, for a kid. It's the same standard of survival is going to be applied to everyone. So.
Yeah. All right.
It's a good way to wrap it up right there.
Yeah, let's talk about
a little activity. I want to make sure I'm close to home base.
For what?
What's that? Sorry?
What was the last thing you said? I missed it.
Oh, I'm feeling a little bit of activity. Pursuant to the conversation we had earlier about my
with that constipation issue.
Yeah, and the crippled constipated guy over here.
Yeah, it's we might as well make it public, let everybody know. But I'm having something going on down there, so I think we better wrap it up soon. This is good.
A little rumbling down below.
Yeah, been like a week since I've had anything serious, so
all right,
good opportunity.
You're crowning.
So, okay, might as well make it public. What do we want to do next week, guys?
All right, so the idea for the next week was I'd like to do 5, because I think 3 would be really short, but the top 5 specific items for our bug out bag. It could be our favorite or most important, however you want to interpret it, I guess. But not just the type of item like knife, but the specific product model, whatever you like. They're individually going to do bug out bag, top 5 or favorite 5 items for our bug out bag.
Okay.
That works for me. Does that work for you guys? Is everybody in the chat? Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
Something you guys want to see?
Last 60 seconds for questions, as JJ intelligently had the forethought.
Next week also, are we doing, Che, do you want to do it on your channel next?
No, I'm not ready. I'm too busy.
Okay.
That's a good point. For me to set up and figure out all the
I think we did 3 on mine. So let's
I got one more.
Yeah, let's do one more on yours, and then hopefully Chael has his shit together, and then he'll be ready.
Okay, so Eric's channel for sure. Why don't we do it 2 weeks from now? We'll do the video Saturday, March, whatever that is.
That would be March 17th.
Okay.
My birthday.
Or sorry, 2 weeks today. 2 weeks today. We'll do the live.
Oh wait, no. Let's do 2 weeks today for the video, and then
and then a week later for live.
And then a week later for the live. Yeah. So the 17th. The 17th for the video, and then the 24th for the chat. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Does that work?
I'm looking at the chat here. I got like people telling me prune juice. Go getting advice on my constipation here.
Well, no, here's an actual for everyone out there.
Magnesium pills will work too.
Magnesium and
you know what? I was at a friend's place earlier tonight. His sister is a nutritionist, whatever, right? And she's magnesium. I took 3 magnesium pills earlier tonight.
Yeah. There you go. It'll work. Yeah. And it's not as hard as on your system as X-Lax. I'm just saying. It is.
Take a couple of shots of olive oil or something too might help.
There you go.
I don't know how we got on this topic. Eric, you can say though before I interrupted you.
Hey,
what's that?
Eric, Brian has a little bit of crush on you.
Oh yeah.
Nick and Bottom. Just let you know.
Yeah. It happens, man. It happens. You know, what are you gonna do?
Get that slick back Conan O'Brien hair. How can you blame him?
Yeah, right. I'm achieving my final form. I had the long hair for a while and it's working my way up.
Okay, so can we go through it again? Because I've had too much fun.
Okay. So we're going top 5 bug out bag pieces of gear, items, whatever you want to call it.
Specific. Like actual
specific. This is what I like.
Whatever, brand, whatever, however specific you want to get.
And that's going to be aired. We're going to air that at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the 17th.
You know what? Because we're hosting on my channel right now, it's 5 p.m. Pacific time. How about that?
So you're confusing people, man.
Okay, so 2 weeks today, and then we'll have the chat about it on the 24th.
And then the chat on the 24th. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And stay tuned to all 3 of our channels. Links are in the description to each of our channels. And we'll be back in a couple weeks. Thanks for watching, guys.